Over the last 25 years, I've had the privilege of interviewing and highlighting some truly interesting people. I mean, everyone who is anyone, both the famous and the infamous, from presidents and their first ladies to kings and queens, movie stars and pop stars, captains of industry, heads of state, sports personalities, innovative entrepreneurs, and some pretty fascinating everyday people. Today, I am proud to introduce you to D.L. Jennings, an award-winning author and writer who really gets satisfaction from doing something well and putting something out there that is indeed fulfilling. His desire is to leave a lasting impression with his writing and to make sure he leaves this world a better place. What a wonderful mission and purpose of working as a professional and as a person. So DL, let's just start off by talking about your work as a writer, because I know that's your passion. What kinds of stories do you actually like to tell through your books?
Well, the thing I love about fantasy is that you are never confined to just telling stories. Fantasy to me is you get the story that's within the story. And when I was writing my first book, I was focused a lot on, telling the story of how these, normal kind of people can blossom into something that's beyond normal. Sort of basically like breaking the mold, not necessarily playing the roles that you were born to play, but being greater than them. And that's the kind of thing that I really love in fiction in general, is just, the story of the normal everyman going on to accomplish these wonderful, amazing things. And, it's not just limited to fantasy, but it sure does play well.
And, it's interesting because I understand that in addition to being a writer, talking about being a Renaissance man, sir, you're a 14-year active duty veteran of the Air Force. So I'd be remiss as a child of a veteran if I did not say thank you for your service on behalf of a grateful nation. How in the world did that experience shape you into the person that you are now?
Well, first of all, thank you for your support and for your parents. That was one of the things that I think not a lot of people really put, veteran and fantasy author. There's not a lot of overlap there.
Maybe my very first. And as I said, I have interviewed a lot of people. Okay.
Absolutely. I think it used to be a lot more common because when you think of guys who are my heroes, C.S. Lewis and of course, J.R.R. Tolkien. Tolkien obviously wrote his seminal work while he was in the middle of fighting, the Great War. And for me, fantasy was the ultimate escape. And I think that's what drew me to it. Not just that I grew up reading it, but when I was, I wrote my first book while I was deployed, and it was just the most amazing sort of escape for me. And that's what fantasy envelops, and that's what fantasy does. It's this escape, and coming back from our missions at the end of the day, I think it was a lot of sometimes some days I couldn't write because the emotional toll was too much, and some days I just had to write. And I think being going on all the deployments that I did, leaving me with all this time to think. It was an incredible thing for me, and definitely helped me grow as a person and a writer.
DL, it's funny because you're talking to a real fantasy fangirl here. I was a Game of Thrones fanatic. I saw every single episode, and I have read the books. I am a Harry Potter aficionado. I started way back with Raiders of the Lost Ark. Oh. I really enjoy sort of escaping into a utopian type world. And so obviously when we were going to chat together today, I said, well, this is my kind of guy. You already said Tolkien was an inspiration. Who else has been your inspirations as a fantasy author?
Absolutely. And, I would be remiss if I didn't, mention guys like George R.R. Martin and, to me, so I grew up in a household that loved reading. Both my parents were, on top of being Air Force veterans, both of them, they were voracious readers. And my mom was the biggest part of inspiring me to read and leading me into fantasy as a young kid. So C.S. Lewis was actually one of the very first authors I remember reading. I must have been like 6 or 7, and I remember her reading The Magician's Nephew, very specifically that book by C.S. Lewis from his Chronicles of Narnia stories, which it just, children around the world, adults around the world have enjoyed. And C.S. Lewis, I think, was one of the real reasons that I got into fantasy, because he would paint these incredible worlds. And he wasn't just limited by the fantasy that, we're familiar with The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. He also had this other, he dipped his toes into science fiction. He was one of the, writing in the 60s about going to Mars, going to Venus, and, all these fantastical stories, which is, it always appealed to me. And it's not to say that I can't enjoy the occasional thriller or, nonfiction book, but there's something about fantasy, and there's something about the magical worlds that these authors paint that's always spoken to me. And I think C.S. Lewis is the finest example of that.
Well, talk about the worlds that they've created. I'm going to give you a chance to expose our viewers to one that you created. Let's talk a little bit about the Highglade series. So you so eloquently said that these authors who are your inspiration paint pictures. So, sir, have at it. Paint us a picture about the world you've created in the Highglade series.
Oh, absolutely. And, it's funny because I was thinking about it, and I said, what's the best way that I could really describe this world? And interestingly enough, it's very much focused on our, it's not dissimilar from our own. We have things like, I talk a lot about the horses that are in these world. Horseback riding is a big part of it, transportation, going back and forth. There's mountains, there's volcanoes, there's desert, there's, the frozen tundra of the north, and there's the burning sands of the south. And it actually, the desert scenes were one that were, I think, the easiest to write for me, because I deployed to a lot of desert places. So it wasn't really a big stretch for me to think about, what's it look like? What's it like being in a desert all day? Or what are the people like who are wandering through these deserts? So, there's my world is, I tried to sort of blueprint it like our own. And I found that some of the best characters that I've written are characters that I base on real people. So there's a very diverse cast of characters in this world, which actually the other world is literally a name for one of the places in the series, in the Highglade series. And it's sort of this, it's basically, you'd think of it sort of like your Mount Olympus. It's the realm of the gods. And it was definitely, I named it very deliberately. I sort of wanted to, I really invent my own mythology here. I'm a big fan, of all the myths and legends throughout our history. And I really wanted to sort of come up with my own. So, the other world was a big part of that. And in the Highglade series, you're getting these characters who walk and talk with these gods. Gods are very much a part of their creation. You get characters who are invoking their names all the time, telling these legends, telling these creation myths. And there's actually a piece of dialogue in there that says, this isn't just stories about the way things are or the way things were. This is actually how things are. There are laws of nature. There are these gods, and they interact with their people. So I love that, being able to sort of draw this religion into the mythology of my work too.
DL, one of the things I think that fans of fantasy writing really enjoy is the whole concept of maybe you can walk with the gods. Maybe you can actually interact with godly creations. Maybe you can talk to animals. Maybe there are supernatural people amongst us. Maybe there are indeed people from other worlds. And that's what draws us in. I'm telling you that from a fan's perspective. But listen, I'm not the only fan. I see from your resume that your work has received a number of awards. Tell me about a couple of them that you'd like to highlight.
Absolutely. I was very pleased when in 2018, Gift of the Shaper won the Beverly Hills Book Award for Best Fantasy. 2 years later, when the sequel came out, Awaken the Three, that one won the Best Indie Book Award for, again, category of fantasy. And I was really, it was a big deal for me. Writing to me is a passion. It's very much something that I want to be good at. And I want to leave, in your words, a lasting impression. And it's very important to me that people look at my work and they say, this is good, this has merit. So, the fact that somebody had, a panel of judges were able to look at both of these books and say, this is literary, there's literary significance here. This isn't just a fun book to read. This is actually something that, is worthy of an award. That was probably one of the proudest moments. Those two awards were some of the proudest moments of my life. Not to trivialize my military service at all, but this is something that I've worked towards, for, it's, going on 40 years now. And
Dale, it's your passion. When someone acknowledges your passion, we all get that Sally Field in us that says they like me. They really like me. And it's okay to feel that way. And I say bravo to you, because you are actually working in your purpose. And when someone gets the opportunity to do that, that's a wonderful thing. So let's plug this. Where can people find your books?
Best place I always direct people is Amazon. Which is a wonderful resource. I do have, I like to sell signed copies through my website, which is dl-jennings.com. Taking a page out of some of my favorite authors' books. That's one of the best things that you can do for people who really appreciate your work, is to, sign and personalize. If I could fly around the country all the time and sign books for everyone, I do it. But dl-jennings.com is where you can pick up a signed, personalized copy. Or, if worse comes to worse, you can always just walk into a bookstore and request it.
Okay, I'm going to ask a favor since I got you. Let's get a little insight, a little sneak peek into the third entry of Highglade. Give me a little hint. What's going on?
Well, I will tell you. One of the things that I did with book 2, it's called Awaken the Three, is I took the title directly from a piece of dialogue in book 1. I did the same with book 3. So I already know book 3 is going to be called Days of the Dark, and I'm about 3/5 of the way done writing it. I will tell you, it is going to be planned to be the third and final book in the Highglade series, and which is very hard for me to do because I love writing it. But sometimes when you tell a story and it comes to a natural conclusion, I feel like it's the best thing for that book or for the story in general to just say, I've said all I can. Here is everything wrapped up in a nice little bow. And I can definitely tell you there is going to be a clash between gods and mortals, and it will shake the earth.
Fantastic. Well, I am giving the Highglade series to my 16-year-old son. So I'm looking forward to getting that third entry, and I will ask for a little personal privilege and have you sign my third copy. Thank you very much.
It would be my honor.
Absolutely. Let's when we conclude, I always like to give my wonderful interview subjects the opportunity to tell us the one thing they'd like the viewer of the video feature to walk away with, because we want to make sure that our audience knows what's important to you.
I want people to see me as not just someone who is a writer, and not just someone who is a military vet, But, just like in my stories, how I like to see people become something greater than the sum of their parts, I would like people to see me as someone who is coming away as someone who's greater than just the sum of his parts too, not just not just a military vet, not just a writer. And I am, you said it before, and I said it too. I'm absolutely passionate about writing, and I am so thrilled that I'm able to do this. I'm able to write for really the first time in my life. I get to focus on it, and it's just. I would love for people to see me as someone who has left the world a better place through my actions. Defending this great country of ours, and as a writer, for giving people something to escape to when everything else is kind of seems bleak. So that's how I got through all my deployments, and I hope it's something that some of my readers can better themselves too with the escapism through fantasy.
Well, one of my favorite authors is C.S. Lewis, and the quote that I sort of live by is, "You can make anything by writing." And I have now written 3 books, and it has filled me 3 best-selling books, and I'm very proud of that. And I am just happy when I go into my writing space. So to meet a fellow author whose passion he gets to feed just makes me very happy. DL, thank you so much for your time today. This has just been wonderful. I hate that I was a bit of a fangirl throughout the interview, but
are you kidding me? That made my day.
well, I'm glad. I'm absolutely glad. And anytime a very gifted and talented person can take us to a new space where we can indulge our own fantasies and be transported, I think they've done a pretty good job. Thank you so much.
Thank you.